The wind was a blade against the thin fabric of his coat. Leo hunched his shoulders, the insulated delivery bag clutched in his numb fingers, feeling like the only source of warmth in a world that had turned to monochrome chaos. Snow, which had been a gentle, festive flurry an hour ago, now swirled in a blinding, horizontal assault, erasing the world beyond the weak glow of his car's headlights. This was the last delivery. One more, and he could go home to Lily. He checked the address on his phone again, the screen slick with melting flakes. Croft Estate. The name sounded old and severe, like the iron gates that now loomed before him, their black spires already frosted with white. The estate was miles outside the city, perched on a hill that probably had a magnificent view on a clear day. Tonight, it just felt like the edge of the world. The gates swung open with a silent, imposing grace, summoned by a code he had been given. Leo guided his sputtering sedan up the long, winding drive, the tires crunching on the freshly fallen snow. The house that came into view was not the old, Gothic manor he had imagined. It was a fortress of glass and dark stone, a monument to modernism that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly sterile. He parked where the instructions indicated, a heated patch of cobblestone near a side entrance. The bag felt heavier now. Its contents, some ridiculously expensive version of covens, and a bottle of wine that cost more than his monthly rent. A stark reminder of the chasm between his life and the life lived within these walls. He took a deep, cold breath, his gaze falling to his wrist. Peeking from under his cuff was a bracelet of mismatched plastic beads, garishly pink and yellow. Lily had made it for him last week, a solemn gift for his long day at work. It was his anchor. He pressed the buzzer, the sound swallowed by the howling wind. For a long moment, nothing happened. He shifted his weight, the cold seeping through the soles of his worn boots. He was about to press it again when the heavy door swung inward. The man standing there was not a butler. Leo recognized him instantly from the cover of Forbes magazine, the one his friend Mia had pointed out at the grocery store checkout. Julian Croft, the tech billionaire, the corporate shark. In the pictures, he had looked severe and untouchable. In person, he was just tall. He wore a simple black cashmere sweater and dark trousers, clothes that probably cost a fortune but looked deceptively comfortable. His hair was a little disheveled, and his eyes, a startlingly clear gray, held a deep, surprising weariness. "You're from the Gilded Spoon?" Julian Croft's voice was low and smooth, a stark contrast to the storm raging behind Leo. "Yes, sir, Mr. Croft. I have your order." Leo's own voice sounded thin and reedy. He held out the bag. Julian took it, his fingers brushing against Leo's. The brief contact was like a spark of static, a flicker of warmth against his frozen skin. "I'm surprised you made it. The weather advisory came on half an hour ago. They're closing the road." "Last delivery of the night," Leo said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "I was already on my way." He just wanted to get back in his car, crank the heater, and start the slow, treacherous drive back to his daughter. "Well, thank you." Julian's gaze lingered on him for a second longer than necessary, a flicker of something unreadable in those gray eyes. He seemed about to say more, but then he simply nodded and began to close the door. Leo turned, pulling his collar tighter around his neck as the wind tore at him. He fumbled for his keys, his fingers stiff and clumsy. He slid into the driver's seat, the vinyl cold and cracked against his legs. He turned the key in the ignition. A cough. A sputter. And then nothing. He tried again. The engine whined pathetically before falling silent. A cold dread, far more chilling than the blizzard, snaked its way up his spine. He tried a third time, pumping the gas pedal in a useless, desperate prayer. Silence. His phone buzzed in his pocket. a harsh, insistent vibration. He pulled it out, his heart sinking when he saw the name on the screen. Mark. He answered, because not answering was always worse. Hello? Where are you, Leo? Mark's voice was slick with false concern, an oil spill over a toxic sea of resentment. Lily's sitter called me, said you were running late. Again. My car broke down. I'm on my last delivery. The storm is bad. Each word was a small, hard stone in his throat. He did not have a sitter. Lily was with Mia, his best friend, a fact he guarded fiercely from Mark. Always an excuse. The sneer was audible. You're irresponsible. What kind of father leaves his daughter waiting in a snowstorm? If you can't even manage a simple delivery job, maybe you shouldn't be managing a child. Leo closed his eyes. The words were familiar barbs, each one sharpened by years of practice. He leaned his forehead against the freezing glass of the window, the cold a welcome distraction from the heat of his shame. I'll be home as soon as I can, Mark. You'd better be. Or maybe I'll come make sure you get home safely. Where are you? Send me the address. No. The word was quiet, but firm. Panic clawed at him. The thought of Mark showing up here, at this place, in front of this man. Suddenly, his car door was pulled open. Leo flinched, gasping, twisting to see Julian Croft standing there, snowflakes clinging to his dark hair. Concern was etched onto his sharp features, cutting through the intimidating mask of the CEO. He had obviously seen the failed attempts to start the car. Is everything all right? Julian asked, his voice low but carrying easily over the wind, and the tinny sound of Mark's voice still spilling from the phone. My car won't start, Leo stammered, his face burning. He felt small and pathetic. Mark's voice sharpened from the phone. Who is that? Who are you with, Leo? Julian's eyes narrowed, his focus shifting to the phone in Leo's hand. He heard the aggressive, possessive tone, saw the way Leo shrank from it. Without a word, Julian reached out, his hand closing over Leo's. His touch was firm, steady, and surprisingly gentle. He took the phone. Leo's breath hitched. He could only watch, frozen, as the billionaire put the phone to his own ear. Who is this? Julian's voice was no longer just low, it was glacial. It was the voice of a man who commanded boardrooms and dismantled competitors without breaking a sweat. There was a sputtering on the other end of the line. Who the hell is this? Give the phone back to Leo. Leo is busy, Julian said, his gaze locked on Leo's, a silent offer of sanctuary in their gray depths. And he will not be taking your calls tonight, or any other night. He's with me now. A beat of stunned silence from Mark. Consider this your only warning, Julian continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper that was somehow more menacing than a shout. Do not contact him again. He ended the call. The silence that followed profound and absolute. He handed the phone back to Leo, whose hand was shaking so badly he could barely take it. The roads are closed, Julian said, his tone softening as he looked back at Leo. You can't stay out here. You'll freeze. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. Come inside. Leo could only nod, a wave of dizzying relief washing over him, so potent it almost brought him to his knees. For the first time in a very long time, someone else had stepped in. Someone else had taken the blow. He let Julian Croft lead him out of the dying car and back toward the impossible, intimidating warmth of the house. The door closed behind them, shutting out the storm with a heavy, final thud. The silence of the house was immense, a stark contrast to the howling gale outside. Leo stood dripping on a sleek, dark stone floor, feeling utterly out of place. The air smelled faintly of cedar and clean linen, the scent of wealth so understated it was almost unnoticeable. Julian gestured down a long hallway. There's a guest bathroom just there. You can dry off. I'll find you some clothes. Leo nodded, unable to form words. He felt stripped bare, his humiliation and fear laid out for this powerful stranger to see. He walked toward the bathroom on unsteady legs, every instinct screaming at him to be invisible. The bathroom was larger than his entire living room. A rainfall showerhead was encased in a seamless wall of glass, and a freestanding tub sat like a piece of modern sculpture. He peeled off his wet coat and sweater, catching a glimpse of himself in the vast mirror. He looked pale and drawn, his eyes wide with a mixture of exhaustion and shock. The colorful beads of Lily's bracelet were a slash of desperate, childish hope against his pale skin. When he emerged, a neat pile of clothes was waiting on a bench outside the door. A soft gray sweatshirt and dark sweatpants. They were ridiculously soft, the fabric a caress against his chilled skin. They were also far too big, but they were warm and dry. He found Julian in the kitchen, a space of gleaming stainless steel and dark wood that looked like it had never seen a speck of flour. He was unpacking the food Leo had delivered, his movements efficient and precise. "I assume you haven't eaten," Julian said, not looking up. "We can share this." "You don't have to do that," Leo said quietly. You've already done too much." Julian finally looked at him. His gray eyes were serious. "My car mechanic will be stranded until tomorrow at the earliest. The tow trucks aren't running. You're stuck here, whether you like it or not. The least I can do is offer you dinner." He paused. "And it was a rather unpleasant phone call to interrupt. I'd feel better knowing you weren't going hungry on top of everything else." There was no pity in his voice, only a straightforward pragmatism that Leo found strangely comforting. He nodded, sinking onto one of the stools at the massive kitchen island. He watched as Julian plated the food with an unexpected grace. They ate in the cavernous living room, seated on a sprawling white sofa that probably cost more than his car. A fire crackled in a wide, minimalist fireplace set into a wall of black slate. Outside, the snow continued to fall, pressing against the floor-to-ceiling windows like a soft white curtain, isolating them from the rest of the world. "Your bracelet," Julian said, breaking the silence. He gestured with his fork toward Leo's wrist. "It's very colorful." Leo's hand instinctively went to cover it. "My daughter made it." The words came out softer than he intended. A flicker of warmth entered Julian's expression. "Your daughter?" "Lily. She's 5. A lump formed in Leo's throat. He needed to call Mia to check on her. I should call my friend. She's watching her." "Of course." Julian gestured to the phone Leo had placed on the coffee table. Leo quickly dialed Mia's number. She answered on the first ring. "Leo. Oh, thank God. I saw the weather report. Are you okay? Where are you?" Her voice was a welcome balm of frantic, genuine concern. "I'm fine, Mia. I'm safe. But my car, it died. I'm stranded at the client's house." "Stranded? You mean you're stuck there? With the billionaire?" Mia's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Is he as much of a robot as they say in the magazines?" Leo glanced at Julian, who was politely looking into the fire, pretending not to listen. "He's been very kind. How's Lily?" "She's an angel. We built a pillow fort, and she's currently coloring. She misses you, but she's fine. Don't you worry about a thing. You just stay safe and warm." "I will. Tell her I love her, and I'll see her as soon as the roads are clear." "Will do. And Leo? Be careful." "I will," he promised, though he wasn't sure what he was promising to be careful of. He hung up, the ache of missing his daughter a physical weight in his chest. "She's all right?" Julian asked. "She's fine. With my best friend." Leo managed a small smile. "They're probably having more fun without me." "I doubt that," Julian said softly. He took a sip of his wine, his gaze thoughtful. "This house is always quiet. Too quiet. I imagine having a 5-year-old around would be different. It was a small admission, a tiny crack in the formidable facade. Leo saw, in that moment, not the powerful CEO, but a lonely man in a vast, empty house. The chasm between them seemed, for just a second, a little less wide. He found himself relaxing, the tension that had been coiled in his shoulders for years beginning to ever so slightly unwind. They finished their meal in a more comfortable silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the muffled howl of the wind. The next morning, the world was a blanket of pristine, undisturbed white. The blizzard had passed, leaving behind a profound silence and at least 3 feet of snow. The roads were impassable. Leo's heart sank. He was still trapped. He found Julian already awake, dressed in another impeccably tailored but casual outfit, standing by the massive windows with a tablet in his hand. He looked as if he hadn't slept, but his focus was sharp. "Good morning," Julian said, his eyes meeting Leo's. "The city plows won't reach this far out until this afternoon at the earliest. We have some time." Leo's anxiety must have shown on his face. "I need to get back to my daughter." Julian's expression softened. "I know." He set his tablet down. "I've been thinking about that. Your friend's apartment. Is it secure?" Leo blinked. "Secure? It's a normal apartment." "The man from the phone call," Julian stated, his voice devoid of judgment but heavy with implication. "Does he know where she lives?" A cold knot formed in Leo's stomach. "Yes." Julian nodded, as if confirming something he already suspected. "I have a security team. They use vehicles equipped for this kind of weather. I'd like to send them to pick up your friend and your daughter and bring them here." Leo was floored. "Here? You don't have to do that. That's too much." "It's safer," Julian said simply. "They can stay in the guest wing. There's plenty." He was right. The thought of Lily and Mia being here, safe within these modern fortress walls, was a relief so profound it almost made Leo's knees buckle. He looked at this man, this practical stranger who had so efficiently and calmly taken control of a situation that had been slowly drowning Leo for years. "Okay," Leo whispered. "Thank you." An hour later, a sleek black SUV that looked like it belonged in a spy movie crunched up the driveway. Mia emerged, her eyes wide as she took in the house. And then, a small figure in a bright pink snowsuit tumbled out after her, her face lighting up when she saw Leo standing in the doorway. "Daddy!" Lily launched herself into his arms, and Leo held her tight, burying his face in her snow-dusted hair, breathing in the sweet, familiar scent of her. All the fear and uncertainty of the past 12 hours melted away in that embrace. "I missed you, sweet pea," he murmured. "Mia and I made a castle," she announced proudly, pulling back to look at him. Her eyes, big and brown, and full of a child's unfiltered curiosity, then traveled past Leo to the tall figure standing behind him. Julian stood awkwardly in the background, his hands in his pockets, looking for all the world like a man who did not know what to do with a small child. Lily, however, was not intimidated. She pointed a mittened finger at him. "Are you the king of this castle?" A ghost of a smile touched Julian's lips. It transformed his face, erasing some of the weariness. "Something like that," he said, his voice softer than Leo had ever heard it. Lily walked right up to him, craning her neck to look up at his face. "It's a very big castle. Do you have a dragon?" "No dragon," Julian admitted, crouching down so he was closer to her level. "I'm afraid it's just me." "Oh." Lily seemed to consider this. She unzipped a tiny pocket on her snowsuit and pulled out a folded, slightly crumpled piece of paper. She carefully unfolded it and held it out to him. It was a drawing, a crayon-scrawled masterpiece of a pink sun, a green sky, and 2 stick figures holding hands. One was labeled Daddy, and the other, in wobbly letters, Me. "This is for you," she said with the solemnity of a diplomat presenting her credentials. "For letting us visit your castle." Leo watched, his breath caught in his throat, as Julian Croft, the ruthless CEO, the man who moved markets with a single decision, took the crumpled drawing from his daughter's hand. He held it as if it were a priceless document, his expression one of genuine, unguarded surprise. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice a little rough. "It's the best thing I've received all day." In that moment, watching the cautious, lonely billionaire connect so effortlessly with his bright, fearless daughter, Leo felt a wall around his own heart begin to crumble. He wasn't just a client. He wasn't just a protector. He was just Julian. And Julian, he was beginning to realize, was someone unexpectedly, terrifyingly kind. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended reality. The snow outside melted slowly, but the roads remained treacherous, and Julian insisted it was safer for them to stay. The vast, sterile mansion began to change. Lily's brightly colored toys were a cheerful invasion in the minimalist living room. The sound of her laughter echoed in hallways that had only known silence. Mia, ever the perceptive observer, took it all in with a raised eyebrow and a knowing smirk. She cornered Leo in the kitchen on the second day while Julian was showing Lily the koi pond that was, to her delight, inside the house. "So," Mia began, leaning against the gleaming counter, "the Ice King has a soft spot for 5-year-olds with crayons?" Leo felt a blush creep up his neck. "He's just being nice." "Leo, honey, nice is holding a door open. Arranging an armed escort to bring your delivery guy's daughter and her babysitter to your multi-million-dollar fortress because your ex is a psycho? That's a whole other level of nice. That's biblical." "It's not like that," he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. He couldn't deny the truth in her words. Julian had been more than kind. He had been a shield, isn't it? Mia's gaze was sharp. "I see the way he looks at you when you're not paying attention. Like you're a puzzle he desperately wants to solve. And you," she poked him gently in the ribs, "you actually look relaxed. I haven't seen you look relaxed since before you met Mark." She was right. The constant low-grade hum of anxiety that had been his companion for so long had quieted. Here, inside these walls, with Julian's quiet, steady presence, he felt a sense of safety that was intoxicatingly foreign. The forced proximity created a strange and fragile domesticity. One evening, Leo found Julian in his home office, staring at a spreadsheet with a deep frown. Lily padded in, holding a worn copy of her favorite picture book. She tugged on Julian's sleeve. "Will you read to me?" she asked, her voice small. "Daddy's making soup and he said he's too busy." Leo, who had followed her, started to protest. "Lily, sweetie, Mr. Croft is working." But Julian had already turned from his screen. He looked at the book, then at Lily's hopeful face, and the tension in his shoulders seemed to melt away. He lifted her onto his lap without a word and began to read, his low voice filling the quiet room. Leo stood in the doorway, watching them, his heart doing a strange, painful flip in his chest. Later that night, after both Lily and Mia were asleep, Leo found Julian by the living room windows, staring out at the snow-covered landscape. "Thank you," Leo said softly, coming to stand beside him. "For reading to her. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Julian replied, his gaze still fixed on the darkness. "Her favorite part is the grumpy bear who finds a friend." Leo smiled. "She's always loved that one." They stood in silence for a moment, the space between them charged with unspoken things. It was in these quiet moments that Leo felt the connection deepening, a delicate thread spinning between them in the stillness of the house. The peace, however, was fragile. The outside world intruded on the third day. Leo's boss from the Gilded Spoon called. His tone was apologetic, but firm. "Leo, I'm sorry. We've had a complaint, a very influential one, from a Mr. Mark Jensen. Leo's blood ran cold. What did he say? He made some serious allegations. Unprofessional conduct. Said you were harassing another client. It's ridiculous, I know, but he's threatening to make a stink with some of our biggest investors. My hands are tied. I have to suspend you, pending an investigation. The floor seemed to drop out from under him. That job was his lifeline. It was how he paid for Lily's preschool, for their tiny apartment. He hung up the phone, his body trembling with a powerless rage. Julian found him moments later, his face a mask of cold fury. I was on a call with my legal team, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. I have alerts set for any mention of my name or address. A rather nasty, anonymous post just went up on a local gossip blog. It mentions a delivery driver being held at my estate. It implies unpleasant things. It was Mark. It had to be. He was trying to ruin Leo from the outside, to poison the one safe place he had found. He's trying to take my job, Leo whispered, the words tasting like ash. He's trying to make me seem unstable. He'll use it to try and take Lily. The fear was a physical thing, a hand squeezing his lungs, making it hard to breathe. He stumbled back, leaning against the wall for support, the sheer weight of his exhaustion and terror finally crashing down on him. Tears he had held back for years burned at the back of his eyes. I can't lose her, he choked out, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor, his head in his hands. She's all I have. He felt a presence before him and looked up through blurry eyes. Julian was crouching in front of him, his usual composure gone, replaced by a raw, fierce protectiveness. He reached out, not to touch him, but his hand hovered in the air between them, a silent offer of support. You will not lose her, Julian said, his voice a low, steady anchor in Leo's storm. I will not let that happen. In that moment, Julian confessed something that shattered the last of Leo's defenses. My father, Julian began, his voice strained, built his empire on the idea that emotion was a liability. Love, affection, they were weaknesses to be exploited in others and eradicated in oneself. I grew up in a house much like this one, just as big, just as empty. It was never a home. It was a headquarters. I was a future asset, not a son. He finally let his hand rest on Leo's knee, the touch a grounding weight. I spent my entire adult life building my own walls, my own fortress. I thought it was what I wanted. Control. Silence. And then you and your daughter showed up in the middle of a blizzard. He gave a short, humorless laugh. For the past 3 days, this place, it has felt more like a home than anywhere I have ever lived. That little girl's drawing is taped to the wall in my office. It's the only personal thing in there. He looked directly into Leo's eyes, his own gray ones, shining with a vulnerability that mirrored Leo's own. This is not about obligation anymore, Leo. I am not protecting you because you are a stranger in trouble. I am protecting you because the thought of you and Lily not being here, not being safe, it is unacceptable to me. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest and utterly terrifying. The world narrowed to the space between them, the sound of their breathing, the solid weight of Julian's hand on his knee. Leo's tears had stopped. He was just looking at Julian, really seeing him for the first time. He saw the loneliness he had only glimpsed before, the deep-seated hunger for a connection he had been taught to deny himself. Julian, Leo whispered, his voice hoarse. I want you to stay, Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. Not because you are in danger, not because you have nowhere else to go. I want you to stay because I want you here, with me. He leaned in slowly, giving Leo every opportunity to pull away. But Leo didn't move. He couldn't. He was held captive by the sincerity in Julian's eyes, by the promise of a safety that was more than just physical. It was a safety for his heart. When their lips met, it was not a kiss of passion, but of recognition. It was soft and tentative at first, a question asked and answered. Then it deepened, a desperate, certain claiming. It tasted of salt and solace, of years of loneliness and a sudden, blinding flare of hope. In the quiet of the house, with the snow-covered world outside, Leo felt like he had finally, after a lifetime of running, come home. The kiss ended, but they remained close, foreheads resting together. The air was thick with the weight of what had just passed between them, a silent pact made in a moment of shared vulnerability. "He won't stop," Leo breathed, the reality of their situation seeping back in. "Mark won't just go away." "He doesn't have to," Julian replied, his voice a low rumble against Leo's skin. He pulled back just enough to meet Leo's eyes, his own gaze now clear and hard as diamonds. The vulnerable man was gone, replaced by the formidable CEO. "He has made a critical error. He has moved from being a personal problem to being a threat to someone under my protection. That makes him my problem now." The next morning, Julian was a man of quiet, decisive action. He spent hours on the phone in his office, his voice calm and lethal. Leo caught snippets of conversations involving legal teams, private investigators, and financial analysts. It was like watching a grandmaster play chess, anticipating his opponent's every move and countering it before it was even made. By midday, the tide had turned. Julian's investigators had uncovered a pattern of harassment and financial abuse in Mark's past, information that was delivered with a restraining order so ironclad it was practically a fortress of paper. They had also discovered that the company where Mark held a senior position was deeply in debt to a holding corporation that, as of 9 a.m. that morning, Julian's firm now quietly owned. Julian explained it to Leo in simple terms, stripping away the corporate jargon. "His leverage is gone. His employer has been advised that his continued employment would be a significant liability. He has been placed on indefinite leave. He will not bother you again." It was breathtaking in its efficiency and its ruthlessness. Julian had not just built a wall around Leo. He had systematically dismantled the threat, brick by brick, until there was nothing left. A few days later, the snow had melted enough for the roads to be clear. The enforced isolation was over. A quiet tension settled over the house. The reason for them being there, the storm, the threat, was gone. They could leave. The thought sent a pang of something that felt terrifyingly like grief through Leo. He was packing a small bag with Lily's things when Julian found him. He stood in the doorway of the guest room, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "My car is fixed," Leo said, his voice sounding hollow in the pristine room. "The mechanic was able to come out this morning. We should get out of your hair." "Is that what you want?" Julian asked, his voice quiet. Leo stopped folding one of Lily's sweaters. He looked at the bag, at the small pile of clothes that represented his entire life. He thought of his cramped apartment, of the constant fear, of the loneliness. Then he thought of the past week, of Julian reading a storybook, of Lily's laughter in the hallways, of the feeling of Julian's hand on his knee, of the taste of his kiss. "No," Leo said, the word a raw admission. "It's not what I want. But it's what's supposed to happen, isn't it? The crisis is over. We go back to our lives." Julian walked into the room, closing the distance between them. He gently took the sweater from Leo's hands and set it aside. "I have no interest in going back to my life," Julian said, his gaze intense. "Not the one I had before. It was gray. I didn't even realize it until you and Lily brought color into it." He took a deep breath, like a man about to dive into deep water. "I spoke with my company's board this morning. I've restructured some things. I've also had a talk with the owner of the Gilded Spoon. Your job is safe, and you've been given a promotion to a management position if you want it. Your suspension has been expunged." Leo stared at him, speechless. "These are not things I am doing to keep you here," Julian continued, his voice earnest. "These are things I am doing to clear the board, to remove any sense of obligation or gratitude or debt. I want you to have a choice, a real one, unencumbered." He reached out and took Leo's hands, his grip firm and warm. "Your life is not in my hair, Leo. Your life is what I want in my house, in my life. I want to hear your daughter's laughter every day. I want to see you across the dinner table. I want to fall asleep next to you and wake up with you. I want to build a life with you, not because you need protecting, but because I need you." The words were a balm on wounds Leo hadn't even known were still open. This was not a rescue. This was a proposal. A sober, daylight choice offered with open hands and an open heart. Leo's own choice was simple. It was the easiest decision he had ever made. "I want that too," he whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears. This time, they were tears of joy. "I want to stay." Julian's shoulders sagged with relief, a slow, beautiful smile spreading across his face. He pulled Leo into his arms, holding him tightly, and for the first time, Leo didn't feel like he was being sheltered. He felt like he was being held, like he was an equal part of the embrace. They were not a protector and a victim. They were just Julian and Leo. And they were home. 6 months later, the world was green. Spring had arrived, breathing life and color back into the grounds of the estate. The imposing modern house no longer felt sterile. It felt lived in, loved. A bright red tricycle was parked haphazardly near the front door. A colorful hopscotch grid was chalked onto the stone patio. In the sprawling back garden, a new small vegetable patch was taking shape. Julian, dressed in old jeans and a t-shirt, was on his knees in the dirt, showing Lily how to gently place a tomato seedling into the soil. He looked younger, the deep lines of weariness around his eyes smoothed away, replaced by a soft contentment. Leo sat on the grass nearby with Mia, watching them, a mug of warm coffee in his hands. The air was filled with the scent of damp earth and the sound of Lily's happy chatter. "Are you planting pizza, Julian?" Lily asked, patting the dirt with muddy hands. "Daddy says tomatoes are for pizza." "They are," Julian said with a laugh, his eyes finding Leo's over Lily's head. "We're planting pizza ingredients, and salad ingredients, and maybe some strawberries for dessert." "I can't believe it," Mia said quietly, shaking her head in mock wonder. "Julian Croft, titan of industry, is now a dirt-covered farmer of pizza ingredients. You've ruined him." Leo smiled, a genuine, easy smile that reached his eyes. "I think he's ruining me. I actually enjoy weeding now." It was true. Life had settled into a beautiful, simple rhythm. They were a family. They had meals together, read bedtime stories together, and fell asleep in each other's arms every night. The ghosts of the past had been banished, not just by Julian's power, but by the steady, quiet light of their shared life. Later that afternoon, after Mia had gone home and Lily was napping inside, Julian and Leo stood by the new garden, surveying their work. Julian wrapped his arms around Leo from behind, resting his chin on his shoulder. "It looks good," Leo said, leaning back into his embrace. "A little crooked, but good." "It's a start," Julian murmured into his ear. "We're building something." They stood in comfortable silence for a long moment, watching a fat bumblebee buzz lazily around a lavender bush. The feeling of Julian's arms around him was as natural as breathing now. It was safety and passion and partnership, all wrapped into one. Leo turned in his arms to face him, looping his own around Julian's neck. He looked at the man he loved, the man who had seen him at his most broken and had not tried to fix him, but had simply offered him a safe place to heal. "Remember that first night?" Leo asked softly. "In the car, when you took my phone?" Julian's expression softened with the memory. "I remember. You told him, 'He's with me now.' You were pretending to protect me." "I was," Julian admitted, his thumb gently stroking Leo's cheek. "It was a lie of necessity." Leo smiled, his heart full. "Well, you don't have to pretend anymore." "No," Julian whispered, his eyes shining with a love so profound it still took Leo's breath away. "I don't." He leaned down and kissed him, a slow, sweet kiss that tasted of sunshine and fresh dirt and the promise of 1,000 more days just like this one. It was a kiss that sealed not a dramatic rescue, but the quiet, extraordinary reality of their life together. It was their happily ever after, growing strong and true in the warm afternoon sun.